what are the challenges still of getting all these guys on the same page? I mean, Sandy, this was the 12th game of the year. And I understand you have a new quarterback. I mean, you have a new coach working with his new quarterback. You have a quarterback working on a new system. I get all of that. But it's the 12th game of the year. Why are there still issues getting this offense into the places that Sean Payton wants them to get to?
They're just not very good. I think, and, the Broncos in what I would consider to be a relatively weak NFL this year. And I say that not because there are a lot more bad teams than usual.
But there's not a lot of dominant
more
teams.
Mediocre teams.
Yeah, there's
than usual.
A few dominant teams.
Let's just look at the AFC. Miami's better than it was last year. Baltimore's better and healthier than it was last year. Jacksonville has throughout the year been more consistent than it was last year. From that point on down, I just named 3 teams out of 16 in the AFC. I don't know. I guess Cleveland's better, maybe Indy. But Houston definitely. But for the most part, teams are kind of the same. Denver's better.
I'll go further than that.
Buffalo's way down. Cincinnati's way down.
Give me a sec. How many teams do you think, realistically, out of the AFC, and you're saying realistically,
Chargers
could
down.
you envision being in the Super Bowl? I can envision the Chiefs and the Ravens and maybe the Dolphins, that's it.
That's it. And the Dolphins have not yet.
And the Dolphins, I put them as a maybe. Maybe.
But the Dolphins have not yet beaten a good
And
team.
I can't envision any of the other teams in the AFC representing the conference in the Super Bowl. To me, this is the Chiefs and the Ravens unless something weird happens. And that's it.
And you know what? The Chiefs are going to have to play on the road in the playoffs for the first time in the Mahomes era.
And they're going
to have to travel in the playoffs.
I look at the game we saw. I see the Eagles and I see the Niners. With all respect to the Cowboys and the Lions, no. It's the Eagles and the Niners.
Well, maybe. I think Dallas gets another bite at the apple.
Now they get a chance
on Sunday when they get Philadelphia down in Arlington.
Yes.
They get their chance. And if they win that game and win the division, boy, it's going to be close between Prescott and Purdy for MVP.
They have the league's best record at home. The Cowboys do 6-0.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of, when you say sort of weaker NFL, I agree, because not only do I look at, there's some bad
teams.
There's
just a lot of mediocre
teams. There's not
teams.
a lot of dominant teams.
No.
And you look at it, and they're like, what's the difference, in all honesty, between the Texans, who the Broncos could probably look in the mirror on their flight home and say, we should have beaten those guys.
Well,
and what's the difference between the Texans and the Steelers and the Browns and the Colts? But I mean, the team isn't demonstrably better. It's just there's a big mushy middle.
Yes, no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't think Houston is any kind of juggernaut, but DeMeco Ryans has the most improved team in the league. He's the coach of the year, hands down. And the rookie of the year, hands down, is Stroud.
Stroud.
Okay, so, and I'll tell you what, Ryan's background is primarily as a defensive coach.
Sure.
And their defense is greater than the sum of its parts.
That's a great observation.
Will Anderson makes it that way. And the other edge rusher, Jonathan Greenard, I believe, who kicked Bull's butt yesterday.
He was all over the field.
He and Anderson were all over the place. And, of course, Stingley's a great story. He's a nephew, of course, of Darryl Stingley, who was paralyzed at Thanksgiving on one of the pregames. I think it was on NBC. They did a very nice piece on the Stingley-Madden family connections.
Right.
And, of course, Darryl Stingley's passed away. John Madden's passed away. But the sons have gotten very close. I believe Mike Madden, John Madden's son, and Derek Stingley Sr. Have become very close. They're relatively close in age and so on. But the nephew is the football star.
And he's a ball hawk.
Boy, can he play.
He could find that ball in the air.
I'm not saying he's better than Surtain, but I do think that cornerbacks who make plays and have a nose for the ball, and I understand people don't throw at Surtain as much, but I don't think they're looking to throw at Stingley.
People didn't throw
all
at
the
Champ
time
Bailey
either.
all that much either, and he still came
And he
away
got
with
a
the
ton
ball.
of interceptions.
Lot of
But
interceptions.
you know what? People would. I will give Surtain this. I have heard more people say, let's not throw in his direction than I heard say, let's not throw in Champ Bailey's direction.
Mhm.
I didn't think it made a lot of sense with Champ.
No.
It made sense with Louis Wright, even though Louis Wright couldn't catch a cold. The only hole in Louis Wright's game was that he had bad hands. Champ Bailey did not have bad hands. In fact, Champ Bailey had better hands than any other defensive back, including Deion Sanders, in the history of the NFL.
And he may have been the best
Bailey
pure
really
tackler
could play wide
as a
receiver.
cornerback.
Yes, he really could have played wide receiver. Deion could not have played in the way Travis
Hunter
plays.
plays. Yeah.
Now,
No.
CU, and
No.
I think Deion deep down knows
I think he knows
that too.
Sure.
But listen, Houston's such a feel-good story. I mean, how can you dislike him? And yesterday, I was heartened. The old-timer in me loves rivalries. I mean, legitimate rivalries where you know there is genuine dislike.
Mm-hmm.
49ers and Eagles stole the show yesterday. Even though they aren't in the same division, that's more of a rivalry than Philadelphia-Dallas to me, because Philadelphia genuinely, and the coaches,
Well, let's be honest, right?
they hate each other.
Rivalries are born in the postseason. Rivalries generally are born in the postseason.
Well,
when the games really matter.
Yes, and this one has a different sort of twist because although the 49ers aren't known for talking smack, the one thing they have said since losing in Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game last year, the one thing they have said was it would have been nice to have a functioning quarterback
Yeah.
for more than just a few minutes in that game before Brock Purdy got hurt. And they ended up playing Christian McCaffrey, a quarterback, because they ran out of quarterbacks. And that's why you have the rule this year that allows teams to dress three. If first two get hurt, you can go to the third.
For the
San
Broncos
Francisco's
now,
been talking a lot of smack.
Sure.
Backed it up yesterday.
Yeah.
A lot of smack. And the whole thing that happened yesterday on the sideline ticked off both coaches to the point where I don't even think coaches care much for each other either. And that's a real rivalry. There's nothing in the AFC like it and nothing else in the NFC like it where there's genuine dislike. Philadelphia and Dallas, they get along. Yeah, it's a rivalry game on Sunday night because two teams are good. They're very close, one to the other. But there isn't genuine dislike between the two. And the other old-time rivalries aren't any good because they're so one-sided. Philadelphia and San Francisco might be the two best teams in football, and they hate each other with a passion, and I love that.
Well, the
And I
Broncos
wish the Broncos could develop
don't
something like
hate
that.
the Chargers. There's never
No,
been
they
like a
don't.
really intense
No.
rivalry with the Chargers, but there needs to be an important performance. And there are a couple things to look at. The offensive line is a concern. I think the fact that Nico Collins, despite the fact that he really was the only downfield target, still being able to do whatever he wanted. On the touchdown that he caught, he was alone in the end zone. Alone in the end zone. No one was even on him. So the pass defense fell apart. The pass blocking fell apart. Russell Wilson came crashing back down to earth. Everything went wrong there. And even remember, by the way, in a 5-point game, a stunningly foolish penalty by Alex Singleton earlier in the game on 4th and 2, in which the Broncos were about to find themselves in a position where they were going to settle for a field goal.
Well, it cost them 4 points.
It cost them 4 points.
At least.
In a 5-point game.
Yeah.
Meaning the Broncos could have been kicking a field goal instead of going to having to go to the end zone. A foolish, and in the moment, I don't know any other way to describe it. I don't really, like a selfish play. by Alex
Well,
Singleton.
I agree with you.
Who kind of wanted to get his.
All these guys, like Alex Singleton, talk about how great
What
team guys they are and they play hard all the
frustrated
time.
me, Sandy, with this was
They're
this.
not. They're not. He's selfish.
There are guys when they go back to the huddle and they make a mistake and they cost their team. You know,
Kareem Jackson's selfish.
They're tapping their guys and they're like, "That's on me. That's my fault. That's my fault. I messed it up." Singleton is looking up at the instant replay and laughing. He's not talking. The camera stayed on him almost the whole time. He's not talking to other guys. He's just kind of laughing it off.
Why? For me,
that's a selfish play.
It's hard to take the Broncos seriously when guys like Alex Singleton and Kareem Jackson are playing 100% of the snaps. The only time Jackson does it is when he gets suspended, and that's been for a lot of games now this year.
Houston
and
has
will
to
continue to miss games. And Alex Singleton, who's celebrated as some kind of new age Dick Butkus because he makes a lot of tackles 8 or 9 yards downfield, commits a penalty that wasn't going to get him thrown out of the game, but on the stupidity scale, could have gotten him thrown out of the game if there was a rule against abject stupidity. He'd have been thrown out. Abject stupidity. And Kisler was right in the Post today. Stroud played him like a Stradivarius.
Yep. And you saw Stroud chuckle as soon as he saw the flags come in and nod.
He knew, and he also knew the rule,
Yep.
which I guarantee Singleton, who ain't the sharpest knife in the drawer to begin with, Singleton had no idea. Singleton figured offsetting penalties, no harm done.
Yeah, but off a false start.
Stroud knew the rule that the personal foul would supersede the false start. So one guy's smart and knows the rules. The other guy is the most overrated player in the league, at least on the defensive side of the ball. And the Broncos have a few overrated players, more than Singleton, but they don't have Patrick Surtain wouldn't do something like that. Justin Simmons wouldn't do something like that. Heck, McMillan and Moreau, who were exposed a little bit yesterday, they wouldn't do something stupid like that. But Alex Singleton, he'd be right up there with Kareem Jackson if I had to list guys who, when they're active, are likely to do stupid things on the field.
Just think about that, because if they have to settle, if Singleton doesn't get that penalty, they're kicking a field goal instead of getting the touchdown. Now the Texans end up with 18 points. The Broncos' final game play of their offensive series, Russell Wilson threw that pick with that ball at the Houston 8. Will Lutz, who came up, by the way, being the special teams player of the month, would have been up for a 25-yard field goal to win the game.
Yeah. Now, of course,
I know a lot of other things in the game could have happened.
The rest of the game might not have played out.
But that would have been 4 points fewer.
Yes, of course.
And maybe they would have scored another time.
You're right to highlight it. You're right to highlight.
And you look at it, well, the rest of the game happened. It did. But if that doesn't happen, then the entire game goes differently. The entire game goes differently. What the Broncos need to do goes differently. Those are the kind of mistakes they simply cannot make. No team is good enough to make those mistakes. But when you're a team that wins on the margins, like the Denver Broncos, you have to be smarter than that. And I don't care if you're a Broncos fan, you looked at it and said, oh, well, those two guys were shoving, you shouldn't have called anything. The league protects its quarterbacks, and if you don't know that, I don't know what you're thinking about football.
And even if it didn't, I thought Singleton was the aggressor.
Look, it was after the play, after the whistle. Of course it's going to get called. It was the most obvious thing that you could imagine, and it happened anyway, and that one stings a lot. So
I
for the
promise
Broncos,
you, Singleton did not know the rule.